When a pregnant woman places her wedding rings on her mafia boss husband's pillow and vanishes into the night, she doesn't just leave behind a marriage, she leaves behind proof of the ultimate betrayal. Lorenzo Vieri ruled half the city's underworld with absolute power, but he never saw the enemy living under his own roof. The night he publicly humiliated his wife at a glittering charity gala, he destroyed more than her heart. He destroyed his future. This is the story of the empire that crumbled, the woman who disappeared, and the storm that changed everything. Watch until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Okay. The Venetian Grand Hotel had been transformed into something between a palace and a fortress for the night. Golden light spilled from crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen waterfalls above the marble floors, casting everything below in warm, expensive radiance. But this wasn't a gathering of tech entrepreneurs or entertainment moguls. This was something darker, more dangerous, more real than any Hollywood fantasy could capture. This was the annual Vieri Foundation Gala, and everyone in attendance knew exactly what that meant. The city's most powerful figures moved through the ballroom like sharks circling prey. Politicians whose campaign promises meant nothing compared to their private agreements. Business executives whose legitimate corporations provided perfect cover for activities the law would never touch. Lawyers who specialized in making problems disappear. Accountants who could make millions vanish into offshore accounts that existed only on paper. And at the center of it all, commanding the room without even trying, stood Lorenzo Vieri. At 38, he was everything the old guard had feared and the new generation aspired to become. 6 feet 2 inches of controlled violence wrapped in a custom Italian suit that cost more than most people earned in a year. Dark hair perfectly styled, sharp jawline, eyes that could assess a man's worth or weakness in seconds. He moved through conversations with the ease of someone who had never questioned his right to power, who had been raised knowing that the world bent to accommodate men like him. The Vieri family had controlled significant portions of the city's underground economy for 3 generations. Shipping and logistics on paper, but everyone knew what really moved through those warehouses along the waterfront. Protection services that guaranteed businesses stayed safe, or burned if they declined. Political influence that reached into City Hall, the police department, the district attorney's office. Lorenzo hadn't built this empire alone, but he had expanded it, modernized it, made it more efficient and more profitable than his father ever imagined. He stood near the center of the ballroom now, surrounded by a small group of men who hung on his every word. Senator Richard Morrison, who had voted exactly as instructed on 3 key pieces of legislation this year. District Attorney Frank Chen, who had an impressive record of failed prosecutions against anyone connected to Vieri interests. Marcus Webb, who owned the largest construction company in the state and understood perfectly which contracts went to which firms. The waterfront development is moving forward, Lorenzo was saying, his voice carrying that particular quality of absolute certainty. By this time next year, we'll control every significant commercial property from the harbor to 15th Street. The environmental review could still cause problems, Morrison cautioned, but his tone suggested he was merely going through the motions of concern. Lorenzo's smile didn't reach his eyes. The environmental review will find exactly what we need it to find. I believe your chief of staff has a brother who works for the consulting firm handling the assessment. Morrison had the grace to look uncomfortable. Yes, that connection exists. Then I'm confident we won't encounter any unexpected obstacles. Lorenzo accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter without looking at the man. Gentlemen, I appreciate your continued partnership. The Vieri Foundation values relationships built on mutual understanding. It was all so civilized, so polite, so completely removed from the reality of what was actually being discussed. This was how power really worked. Not with guns and threats in dark alleys, but with champagne and handshakes in ballrooms where everyone pretended the monster in the room was just another businessman. Across the room, partially hidden behind a marble column, stood Elena Hart Vieri. She watched her husband command his court with the kind of distant observation that came from 3 years of slow disillusionment. Once, she had been captivated by Lorenzo's confidence, his intelligence, his ability to make her feel like the only person in the world when he focused his attention on her. That man still existed somewhere, she supposed, but he appeared less and less frequently as the demands of his empire consumed more of his time and attention. Elena was 29, though she felt decades older on nights like this. She wore a black evening gown that had cost a fortune but felt like armor. elegant, expensive, and completely impersonal. Her dark hair was styled in an elaborate updo that had required 2 hours in a salon that morning. Diamond earrings that Lorenzo had given her for their second anniversary caught the light when she moved. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, the beautiful, polished wife of a powerful man. No one at this gala knew the truth she carried. No one knew that beneath the carefully tailored gown, beneath the jewelry and the makeup and the perfect appearance, she was 6 months pregnant. Elena's hand moved unconsciously to her abdomen, a protective gesture she had trained herself to suppress in public. The pregnancy had been difficult from the start, morning sickness that lasted all day, fatigue that left her exhausted by noon, complications that her doctor described with words like concerning and high risk and requires close monitoring. She had tried to tell Lorenzo, had tried dozens of times over the past 6 months to find the right moment, the right words, the right approach to break through the walls he had built around himself. But there were always meetings, always crises, always some urgent matter demanding his attention. And when she did manage to corner him for a private conversation, his mother somehow always appeared, redirecting his focus, reminding him of obligations that couldn't wait. Sofia Vieri was a force of nature wrapped in Chanel suits and family tradition. Lorenzo's father had died when Lorenzo was 23, leaving Sofia to guide her son's rise to power. She had done her job well, perhaps too well. In Sofia's worldview, the Vieri family legacy was sacred, absolute, non-negotiable. Weakness could not be tolerated. Sentiment was a liability. And a wife who distracted her son from his duties was a problem that needed to be managed. Elena had felt Sofia's influence poisoning her marriage for months. Small comments about how Lorenzo needed to focus on business expansion. Casual observations about how emotional Elena seemed lately. Subtle suggestions that perhaps Elena wasn't quite strong enough for the demands of being a Vieri wife. And Lorenzo, buried under the weight of running an empire, had absorbed these suggestions without question, without examining where they came from or why. The distance between them had grown so gradually that Elena couldn't pinpoint exactly when her husband had stopped seeing her as a partner and started seeing her as an obligation. When had his eyes stopped lighting up when she entered a room? When had his kiss become perfunctory rather than passionate? When had he stopped asking about her day, her thoughts, her dreams? When had she become invisible in her own marriage? "Elena, darling, you look pale." The voice came from behind her, smooth and cultured and sharp as a blade. Elena didn't need to turn to know who stood there. "I'm fine, Sofia." Elena kept her eyes on Lorenzo across the room. "Just tired." "Tired." Sofia moved to stand beside her daughter-in-law, following Elena's gaze to where Lorenzo held court. "You're always tired lately, aren't you? Perhaps you should consider returning to your apartment. These events can be so draining for someone of your delicate constitution." There it was, the suggestion wrapped in concern, the insult disguised as sympathy. Elena had learned to recognize Sofia's tactics, even if she hadn't yet learned how to defend against them effectively. "I'm fine," Elena repeated, forcing strength into her voice that she didn't feel. Sofia sighed, a sound of maternal disappointment perfected over decades. "I worry about you, dear. Lorenzo has such important work to do, such critical relationships to maintain. He needs a partner who can stand beside him at events like this without becoming a burden, someone strong, someone resilient." "Someone like you?" The words escaped before Elena could stop them. Sofia's smile was ice crystallized into something resembling warmth. "I raised Lorenzo to lead, Elena. I gave him the foundation he needed to build what you see in this room tonight. All I've ever wanted is for him to fulfill his potential, to honor his father's memory, to secure the Vieri legacy for future generations." She paused, letting the weight of that statement settle. "But distractions can be dangerous. Emotional entanglements can cloud judgment. I'm sure you understand." Elena understood perfectly. She understood that Sofia saw her as exactly what she had described, a distraction, an emotional entanglement, something to be managed or removed. Before Elena could respond, Senator Morrison's voice cut through the ambient conversation, loud and jovial and completely oblivious to the tension it would create. "Lorenzo, a question for you, my friend." The room's attention shifted. Conversations paused. People turned toward where Morrison stood with Lorenzo, slightly drunk and completely confident in his own importance. "When are you going to give us an heir?" Morrison clapped Lorenzo on the shoulder with the familiarity of someone who thought political influence made them equals. A man of your position, your legacy. Surely it's time to produce the next generation of Vieras, continue the family tradition. Elena's blood turned to ice. Several people laughed, treating it as a joke, but there was genuine curiosity in the faces turned toward Lorenzo. The question everyone had been thinking but had been too polite to ask directly. The expectation that had been building for 3 years of marriage. Lorenzo's expression revealed nothing. He took a slow sip of champagne, letting the moment extend, letting the attention build. When he finally spoke, his voice carried clearly across the suddenly quiet ballroom. An heir requires certain prerequisites, Richard. Lorenzo's tone was conversational, almost amused. It requires a wife who understands the demands of our world, someone strong enough to carry the weight of the Vieri name, someone who can be a true partner in building the future, not just a decoration at parties. Elena felt the room tilt, felt her heart crack inside her chest. Lorenzo continued, oblivious to or uncaring about the devastation his words caused. Unfortunately, what I have is someone who can barely handle the social obligations of our lifestyle without becoming exhausted. Someone emotional, fragile, distracted by sentiment and feelings. He waved his hand dismissively, as if discussing a disappointing business investment. An heir requires strength, requires focus, requires a woman who can be as committed to the legacy as I am. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena stood frozen behind the marble column, one hand pressed against the wall to keep herself steady. She watched her husband, the man she had loved, the father of the child growing inside her, reduce their marriage to a business transaction that wasn't meeting performance expectations. Watched him mock her exhaustion that came from carrying his daughter. Watched him dismiss her emotions while standing 20 feet away from her, talking to a room full of strangers as if she didn't exist. And beside her, barely visible in her peripheral vision, Elena saw Sofia Vieri smile. That smile told her everything. This wasn't random. This wasn't just Lorenzo being thoughtless or stressed or overwhelmed by business concerns. This was orchestration. This was manipulation. This was the final move in whatever game Sofia had been playing for months. Morrison laughed, uncomfortable now, realizing he had stepped into something more complicated than a simple joke. Well, perhaps in time, perhaps... Lorenzo's tone suggested the conversation was over. Now, shall we discuss the harbor zoning changes? The room released its collective breath. Conversations resumed. The moment passed for everyone except Elena. She stood there for another 30 seconds, watching Lorenzo transition seamlessly back to business discussions, as if the entire exchange had meant nothing to him. As if he hadn't just publicly humiliated his pregnant wife. As if their marriage was just another contract to be renegotiated or terminated based on performance metrics. Elena turned and walked toward the exit. Not running, she wouldn't give Sofia the satisfaction. Not crying, she wouldn't give anyone in this room the satisfaction. Just walking, one foot in front of the other, head high, expression neutral, every inch the controlled and polished Vieri wife. Until she was outside, until she was in the back of their private car, until she gave the driver an address that wasn't the penthouse. Mrs. Vieri? The driver, Antonio, met her eyes in the rearview mirror with concern. Is everything all right? Take me to the apartment on Riverside. Her voice was steady, controlled, completely empty. And Antonio? After tonight, you work for Lorenzo, not for us. There is no us anymore. The drive took 20 minutes through city streets that blurred past the tinted windows. Elena sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on nothing. The shock was starting to wear off, and in its place came something colder, something harder, something that felt like ice forming over a wound. 3 years. 3 years of trying to be enough for a man who would never see her as anything more than a disappointment. 3 years of swallowing her pride, accepting Sofia's subtle cruelties, watching her husband drift further into his empire while she became increasingly irrelevant to his life. 3 years of loving someone who had forgotten how to love her back. The apartment on Riverside was one of several properties Lorenzo owned throughout the city. Safe houses, investment properties, places maintained for business purposes or discreet meetings. Elena had the access codes. No one would think to look for her here, at least not tonight. She let herself in, kicked off her expensive shoes, and stood in the dark living room for a long moment. Then she moved methodically, purposefully, like someone who had already made a decision and was simply executing a plan. From the bedroom closet, she retrieved a suitcase. Into it went practical clothes, Jeans, comfortable shirts, a warm jacket. Nothing expensive, nothing that screamed wealth or status. Documentation she had been quietly collecting for months. Her passport, birth certificate, medical records. A credit card in her maiden name that Lorenzo didn't know about. From a locked drawer in the desk, she withdrew several items she had been keeping for a moment she had hoped would never come. Her journals, years of private thoughts, fears, observations, the slow documentation of a marriage falling apart. Medical records from her obstetrician detailing the high-risk nature of her pregnancy, the complications, the concerns about her weakening heart. A small recording device that had captured a conversation between Sophia and Lorenzo 3 weeks ago. A conversation Elena had accidentally overheard that had confirmed all her worst suspicions about who was really orchestrating her isolation. She added one more thing, a small wooden box with carved flowers on the lid, a gift from Lorenzo during their brief honeymoon when he had still known how to smile at her without calculation. Elena spent 3 hours in that apartment, writing a letter that explained everything, writing a second letter to the daughter she carried in case she didn't survive the dangerous delivery her doctors had warned about, writing a third letter to the woman she used to be, the one who had believed in fairy tales and happy endings and the redemptive power of love. When she finished, she placed the letters in the wooden box along with her wedding rings, the engagement ring with its ridiculous 5-carat diamond, the wedding band Lorenzo had placed on her finger while promising forever. She added the medical records, the recording device, the journals. Everything Lorenzo would need to understand exactly what he had done, who had helped him do it, and what he had lost. Then she called a car service, not one Lorenzo controlled, and gave an address to a bus station on the edge of the city. At 3:47 a.m., Elena Hart Vieri walked out of the Riverside apartment carrying a single suitcase and wearing clothes that made her look like any other tired woman traveling through the night. The diamonds were gone. The expensive gown was abandoned on the bathroom floor. The perfectly styled hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like herself again, perhaps for the first time in 3 years. The bus to Harbor's Edge, Maine, departed at 5 a.m. The ticket cost $63, which Elena paid in cash. She chose a seat near the back, pressed her forehead against the cool window, and watched the city she had called home disappear into the pre-dawn darkness. She didn't cry. Tears felt like something she had left behind along with everything else. Inside her, 6 months along, their daughter moved, a flutter of life that was the only thing keeping Elena tethered to hope. This child would be born. This child would grow up knowing she was wanted, loved, chosen. This child would never feel invisible in her own family. Even if it cost Elena everything, even if she had to disappear completely, even if Lorenzo never knew the truth about what he had destroyed, their daughter would be safe. The bus pulled onto the interstate as the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Behind her, the city grew smaller. Ahead of her, an unknown future waited. And in the penthouse she had abandoned, on the pillow where Lorenzo would wake in a few hours, sat a wooden box containing the ruins of everything he thought he knew. Lorenzo Vieri woke at 7:15 a.m. to the sound of his phone vibrating on the nightstand. Sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse master bedroom, casting geometric patterns across Italian marble floors. He reached for the phone without opening his eyes, a habit developed over years of running an empire that never slept. 3 missed calls from Marcus Webb, 2 from his attorney, 7 text messages marked urgent, none from Elena. That thought registered somewhere in the back of his mind as unusual, but didn't quite break through the fog of sleep and the lingering headache from last night's champagne. Elena always sent him a good morning message when she woke before him, usually something simple about breakfast or asking when he'd be home. Lorenzo sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. The bedroom was empty. The bathroom door stood open, dark and silent. Elena's side of the bed was cold, the covers pulled tight as if no one had slept there at all. "Elena?" His voice echoed in the vast space. No answer. He stood, pulling on a black robe, and walked through the penthouse. Master bedroom empty. Guest rooms untouched. The kitchen gleamed with the sterile perfection of a space no one had used. Living room, study, library, all empty, all silent, all exactly as they had been left by the cleaning service yesterday afternoon. Something cold began to form in Lorenzo's chest, something that felt uncomfortably like concern trying to break through layers of certainty that everything in his world functioned exactly as it should. He returned to the bedroom, and that's when he saw it. On his pillow, positioned exactly where his head had rested hours ago, sat a small wooden box. Lorenzo recognized it immediately. He had given it to Elena during their honeymoon in Tuscany, a silly romantic gesture from a version of himself that felt like it belonged to someone else. The box had carved flowers on the lid, roses, Elena's favorite. She had kept it on her dresser for 3 years, using it to store small mementos. Ticket stubs from the opera, a pressed flower from their wedding bouquet. Small pieces of a marriage that had existed before power consumed everything else. Why was it on his pillow? Lorenzo opened the box and the world stopped. Inside, resting on folded papers, were 2 rings. The 5-carat diamond engagement ring he had presented to Elena on a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city, back when he had believed love and power could coexist. The platinum wedding band he had slipped onto her finger while promising forever, protection, partnership. His hands, which never shook during business negotiations or dangerous confrontations, trembled as he lifted the rings. Beneath them lay papers, medical records, journal pages covered in Elena's elegant handwriting, a small digital recording device. Lorenzo's phone rang again. He ignored it. He sat on the edge of the bed and began to read. The first document was a letter, dated yesterday afternoon. Lorenzo, by the time you read this, I will be gone. I won't tell you where because I don't trust you not to follow, and I don't trust myself to be strong enough to leave again if you find me. I need you to understand something. I tried. I tried so many times to reach you, to break through whatever walls you've built around yourself. I tried to tell you about the baby, our daughter. Yes, Lorenzo, a daughter, 6 months along. You would know this if you had answered any of my calls over the past 3 months. You would know this if you had noticed that your wife stopped drinking wine at dinners. You would know this if you had looked at me, really looked at me, even once in the past 6 months. But you didn't, because you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as an obligation, a weakness, a distraction from your empire. Lorenzo's vision blurred. He blinked hard, forcing himself to continue reading. I could have forgiven the distance. I could have forgiven the late nights, the canceled plans, the way you forgot our anniversary. I could have forgiven a lot of things because I loved you. But what I cannot forgive is what happened tonight. You stood in front of everyone who matters in your world, and you reduced me to nothing. You called me weak. You called me emotional. You suggested I was a disappointment, a failure as a wife, not worthy of carrying the Vieri legacy. And you did it while I stood 20 feet away carrying your child. A pregnancy that is killing me, Lorenzo. Read the medical reports. My heart is failing. The doctors give me a 40% chance of surviving delivery. But I was willing to risk it because I loved you and I wanted our child. Wanted to give you the heir everyone keeps asking about. The daughter you don't even know exists. I'm leaving because I need to survive. Because our daughter deserves a mother who is whole, not broken by trying to be enough for a man who will never see her value. Read the journals. Read the medical files. Listen to the recording. Know what you did. Know who helped you do it. Know what you destroyed. I loved you. I will always love the man you used to be, but that man is gone. Consumed by the empire you chose over everything else. Goodbye, Lorenzo. Elena. Lorenzo's hands shook so badly he nearly dropped the letter. His breath came in short, sharp gasps that felt like they were tearing something inside his chest. 6 months pregnant. A daughter. Medical complications. 40% chance of survival. The words repeated in his mind like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. He grabbed the medical records with desperate hands, page after page of clinical language that painted a devastating picture. High-risk pregnancy, gestational complications, preeclampsia, weakening cardiac function, recommendations for immediate bed rest, stress reduction, close monitoring, warnings about the dangers of proceeding with the pregnancy. Notes about how the patient insisted on continuing despite the risks. The most recent report was dated 2 weeks ago. Dr. Sarah Chen had written in careful script, patient presents with increased cardiac strain, blood pressure elevated beyond safe parameters. Patient refused hospitalization, citing personal circumstances preventing necessary rest and care. Strongly advised husband be informed immediately of severity of situation. Patient became emotional, stated husband was too busy to be contacted about women's problems. This physician is deeply concerned about patient's emotional state as well as physical condition. Lorenzo read that paragraph 3 times. Each time it felt like a knife sliding between his ribs. Too busy. He had been too busy to know his wife was dying. The journals were worse, page after page of Elena's private thoughts, chronicling the slow death of their marriage in her own words. October 3rd. Lorenzo came home at 2 a.m. again. I tried to wait up but fell asleep on the couch. He didn't wake me, just went straight to his study. I'm starting to feel like a piece of furniture he walks past without seeing. November 17th. I told him I needed to talk about something important. He said later and took a call from Marcus. Later never came. It never does anymore. December 2nd. Sophia suggested again today that perhaps I'm not strong enough for this family. Lorenzo didn't defend me. He didn't say anything at all, just nodded and changed the subject. I think that hurt more than if he had agreed with her. January 10th. Found out I'm pregnant. I'm terrified and elated and completely alone. I tried calling Lorenzo 4 times today. All calls went to voicemail. I know he's in meetings, but when did I stop being important enough to call back? February 23rd. The doctor said my heart is struggling. Said the pregnancy is dangerous. Asked if I wanted to discuss options. I said no. This baby is the only thing that still feels real. The only thing in my life that still needs me. Lorenzo doesn't need me. He has his empire. But our daughter will need me. I can do this. I have to do this. March 8th. I finally understand Sophia has been intercepting my calls. I saw her delete a voicemail from me on Lorenzo's phone. She saw me watching and smiled. Actually, smiled. She's been doing this for months, keeping me away from him, convincing him I'm weak, emotional, a burden, and it's working. He looks at me now like I'm an obstacle instead of his wife. Lorenzo's vision swam. His mother, his own mother, had been systematically destroying his marriage, and he had been too blind, too arrogant, too consumed with power to see it. With shaking hands, he picked up the recording device and pressed play. Sophia's voice filled the bedroom, crystal clear, recorded 3 weeks ago. Lorenzo, darling, we need to discuss Elena. His own voice responded, distracted, papers rustling in the background. What about her? I'm worried she's becoming a liability. She's been so emotional lately, so withdrawn. People are starting to notice. Richard Morrison mentioned at the club that Elena seemed fragile at the last event. That's not the image the Vieri family needs to project. She's just tired, Mother. The social schedule has been demanding. It's more than that, and you know it. She's not strong enough for this life, Lorenzo. Your father chose me because I could stand beside him in this world. I could handle the pressure, the danger, the demands. I made him stronger. But Elena, a delicate pause. She makes you weaker. You spend mental energy worrying about her feelings when you should be focused on business. You second-guess decisions because you're concerned about her reaction. That's dangerous. I don't. You do. And it needs to stop. The Vieri legacy cannot be built on sentiment. You need a partner who understands that power requires sacrifice, who won't burden you with emotional demands when you have an empire to run. Silence. Then his own voice, tired, accepting. What do you suggest? Create distance. Let her understand that she needs to rise to your level, or accept that perhaps she's not suited for this marriage. Stop coddling her emotions. Stop treating her like she's fragile. If she can't handle the reality of what being a Vieri means, perhaps it's better to know that now before what? Before children complicate things. Can you imagine Elena as a mother? She can barely handle being a wife. The responsibility of raising a Vieri heir would destroy her. Another long pause. Then, you're right, I've been too soft. That needs to change. It does, for the good of the family, for the legacy. Your father would expect nothing less. The recording ended. Lorenzo sat frozen, the device clutched in his white-knuckled hand. He had said those words. He had agreed to create distance, to stop coddling Elena's emotions, to treat his wife like a weakness that needed to be eliminated. His mother had manipulated him perfectly, using his devotion to his father's memory, his obsession with the family legacy, his fear of appearing weak. She had poisoned his marriage one conversation at a time, and he had accepted every drop of poison without question. And Elena had been pregnant through all of it, dying through all of it, trying to reach him through all of it. The phone rang again. Lorenzo looked at the screen with eyes that didn't quite focus, his assistant calling for the 5th time. He answered, "What?" Mr. Vieri, thank God. Your mother has been calling all morning. She says it's urgent. Something about Mrs. Vieri leaving the gala early last night, and Lorenzo ended the call. His mother knew. Of course she knew. She probably orchestrated the entire scene at the gala, positioning Morrison to ask about heirs at exactly the right moment, ensuring Elena would be close enough to hear Lorenzo's response. The phone rang again immediately. His mother's name flashed on the screen. Lorenzo answered and spoke before Sophia could say a word. What did you do? His voice was quiet, deadly, the tone he used when someone had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Lorenzo, darling, I've been trying to reach you all morning. Elena left the gala early last night and she's not answering her phone. I'm worried that she might... What did you do? Silence. Then carefully, I don't know what you mean. She's gone, Mother. Completely gone. Left her rings. Left evidence of every conversation you've had manipulating me against her. Left medical records showing she's been dying for months while you convinced me she was just being emotional. Lorenzo, you're not making sense. Perhaps you should... She's 6 months pregnant. The words came out like broken glass. With my daughter. A high-risk pregnancy that's destroying her heart. And I didn't know because you were blocking her calls. You were feeding me poison, and I swallowed every drop. Lorenzo, you need to calm down and think rationally. Elena is clearly unbalanced. This story about pregnancy is obviously... I have the medical records in my hand. Dr. Sarah Chen, Harbor Medical Center. All real, all documented. All showing that my wife has been trying to tell me about our daughter while you systematically destroyed our marriage. The silence that followed was different, calculated. Sophia's voice, when it came, was steel wrapped in maternal concern. If she's pregnant, then she's attempting to trap you, to secure her position in the family through a child, to make herself indispensable when she's proven herself to be... She left. Lorenzo stood, pacing the bedroom like a caged animal. She didn't try to trap me. She ran. She chose to risk dying alone rather than stay in a marriage you destroyed. Do you understand what that means? How much pain she must have been in to walk away from everything. It means she's manipulative and... Get out! Lorenzo, get out of my house. Get out of my business. Get out of my life. Each word was a hammer blow. You have 24 hours to remove yourself from every position you hold in the Vieri organization. Every board seat, every advisory role, every connection to my empire. After 24 hours, I will remove you myself, and I won't be gentle about it. You can't be serious. I'm your mother. Everything I've done has been for your benefit, for the family legacy. The family legacy, Lorenzo laughed, a sound with no humor in it. You destroyed my family for a legacy that means nothing without people to build it for. You took the only person who ever loved me for something other than power, and you turned me into someone she couldn't even recognize. That's your legacy, Mother. Congratulations. He ended the call and threw the phone across the room. It hit the marble wall and shattered into pieces. For several minutes, Lorenzo stood in the wreckage of his bedroom, papers scattered across the bed, Elena's rings glinting in the morning light, the wooden box that held the ruins of everything he had thought he knew. Then he moved. He called his attorney first. Gerald Moss had served the Vieri family for 20 years and knew better than to ask unnecessary questions. Gerald, I need you to prepare documents removing Sophia Vieri from all positions within family holdings. Every company, every trust, every advisory board. I want it done today. Lorenzo, that's a significant restructuring. Perhaps we should discuss today, Gerald. I don't care what it costs or what favors you need to call in. I want her removed from every position of influence by tomorrow morning. A pause. Then cautiously, may I ask what prompted this decision? My mother systematically destroyed my marriage while my wife was dying. Is that sufficient explanation? I'll have the documents ready by this evening. Next, Lorenzo called Marcus Webb. Marcus, I'm stepping back. Stepping back from what? Everything. The waterfront development, the harbor expansion, the political lobbying, all of it. I'm delegating operational control to you and the council. Lorenzo, what the hell is going on? You've been building toward the waterfront deal for 2 years. You can't just, I can and I am. You've been my second for 8 years. You know the business as well as I do. Better, in some areas. You're more than capable of running things without me micromanaging every decision. This is about Elena, isn't it? It wasn't a question. I heard about last night. Morrison is an idiot, but Lorenzo, walking away from everything you've built isn't going to... She's 6 months pregnant, Marcus. High risk. Possibly dying. And I didn't know because I was too busy building an empire to notice my wife needed me. Silence. Then quietly. Christ, Lorenzo. I need to find her. I need to fix this. And I can't do that while running the organization. Can you handle it or not? I can handle it. But Lorenzo, if she left it, maybe she doesn't want to be found. I know. Lorenzo's voice cracked. But I have to try. She's carrying my daughter. She's dying, and it's my fault. I have to try. The call ended. Lorenzo stood in his study, surrounded by the trappings of power that suddenly felt hollow. Expensive furniture, original artwork, a view of the city he controlled from behind the scenes. None of it meant anything without Elena. He spent the next 6 hours methodically dismantling the structures that had consumed his life. Called every key player in the organization, delegated responsibilities, transferred operational authority, moved himself from the center of the empire to the periphery. His associates were shocked. Some argued, some questioned his sanity. None understood that he had already lost everything that mattered, and the empire he had built to prove his worth was just an expensive monument to his failure. By 3 p.m., Lorenzo's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize.
Is this Lorenzo Vieri? The voice was male, older, with a cautious tone. Yes? My name is David Chen. I'm a private investigator. Your assistant hired me this morning to locate your wife. I need to tell you something before we proceed. Lorenzo's blood went cold. Is she hurt? She's alive as far as I can determine. But Mr. Vieri, your wife made it very clear she doesn't want to be found. She took significant steps to disappear.
Changed her appearance, used cash for everything, avoided security cameras. This is someone who planned her exit carefully. Can you find her or not? I can, but I need you to understand something. If I do this, if I give you her location, you will be violating her explicit wishes for privacy and safety. Are you prepared for the consequences of that? The consequences of finding my pregnant wife who is at risk of dying? Yes, I'm prepared. A long sigh. I'll call you when I have something, but Mr. Vieri, when you find her, maybe ask yourself if you're doing this for her or for yourself. The call ended. Lorenzo stood alone in the penthouse that had never felt like home, holding Elena's rings in one hand and her letter in the other, and for the first time in his adult life, he had no idea what to do. The empire he had built felt like ash. The power he had accumulated felt worthless. The legacy he had fought to secure felt empty. All he wanted was the woman he had driven away and the daughter he would never meet if he couldn't find them. 3 days passed. Lorenzo barely slept, barely ate, barely functioned as anything other than a man waiting for a phone call that would either save him or destroy him completely. David Chen called on the 4th day. I found her, or rather, I found where she went. Harbor's Edge, Maine. Small coastal town, population about 3,000. She purchased a bus ticket under her maiden name 4 days ago. An address? Not yet. She's being careful, but Mr. Vieri, there's something else. I accessed her medical records. With her pre-existing conditions and the complications she's facing, she shouldn't be traveling at all. She should be in a hospital under close supervision. If she's in some small town without proper medical facilities, Lorenzo didn't hear the rest. He was already moving, grabbing keys, wallet, phone. Harbor's Edge, Maine. He could drive it in 8 hours, fly it in 2 if he chartered a plane. Send me everything you have. Every detail about the town, medical facilities, anything that might help. Mr. Vieri, wait. You need to think about this. You can't just show up and expect, send me everything you have. Now. Lorenzo left the penthouse without looking back. Left his mother's calls unanswered. Left Marcus and Gerald and the entire organization to handle themselves. Nothing mattered except finding Elena before it was too late. The private plane left from a small airfield on the edge of the city. Lorenzo sat alone in the cabin as the ground fell away beneath him, watching the city he had conquered disappear into the distance. Somewhere ahead, in a small town he had never heard of, Elena was trying to build a life without him. Trying to survive long enough to bring their daughter into the world. Trying to be strong enough to do it alone. And Lorenzo was flying toward her with no plan. No certainty she would even speak to him. No guarantee he could fix what he had broken. But he had to try. Even if she hated him. Even if she sent him away. Even if he had destroyed any chance of redemption. He had to try. The plane touched down in Portland 2 hours later. Lorenzo rented a car and drove north along coastal roads that wound through pine forests and past rocky shorelines. The landscape was beautiful in a way that felt alien to someone who had spent his entire life in the concrete and steel of the city. Harbor's Edge appeared as the sun began to set, a collection of weathered buildings clustered around a natural harbor where fishing boats bobbed in the gentle waves. White clapboard houses, a main street with a handful of shops, a lighthouse standing watch on the rocky point. It looked like the kind of place where people came to disappear, to escape, to start over. Lorenzo parked on the main street and sat in the car, staring at the town that had become Elena's refuge. She was here somewhere, in one of these buildings, one of these houses, living a life he knew nothing about, and he had no idea what he would say when he found her. The first thing Lorenzo learned about Harbor's Edge was that strangers were noticed immediately. He walked into the only diner on Main Street at 7 in the evening, and every conversation paused. Fishermen in worn flannel shirts looked up from their coffee. A waitress carrying plates stopped mid-stride. The cook visible through the serving window met his eyes with the kind of assessment that came from years of knowing exactly who belonged in this town and who didn't. Lorenzo knew he stood out. Custom suit replaced with dark jeans and a leather jacket, but his watch alone probably cost more than most people in this room earned in 6 months. His entire bearing screamed money, power, city, everything Harbor's Edge wasn't. He took a seat at the counter and waited. The waitress approached after a long moment, a woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and sharp eyes. Her name tag read Margaret. Coffee? Her tone was professionally neutral but not warm. Please, and whatever your dinner special is. Margaret poured coffee that was stronger than anything Lorenzo had tasted in months. Passing through? Looking for someone, actually. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. In a town this small, everyone knew everyone. A stranger looking for someone meant trouble, law enforcement, or both. That's so. Margaret's hand went to her hip. We don't get many visitors this time of year. Most folks who come here are either lost or running from something. Lorenzo met her eyes steadily. Maybe a little of both. Uh-huh. She pulled out an order pad but didn't write anything down. This person you're looking for, they want to be found? The question was sharper than it appeared. Lorenzo took a slow sip of coffee while he considered his answer. Probably not, but I need to find them anyway. Make sure they're safe. Safe from what? From dying alone because I was too stupid to see what was right in front of me. Margaret's expression shifted slightly. Not softening exactly, but reassessing. That's oddly specific. It's the truth. She studied him for another long moment, then called over her shoulder. Jack, you got a minute? A man in his 60s emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. He had the weathered face of someone who had spent decades on fishing boats, and eyes that had seen enough of life to not be impressed by much. This gentleman is looking for someone, Margaret said. Thought you might want to hear what he has to say before we decide whether to help or ask him to leave. Jack crossed his arms and leaned against the counter. I'm listening. Lorenzo had negotiated with politicians, criminals, corporate executives. He had stared down men with guns and talked his way out of situations that should have ended in violence. But sitting in this small-town diner, facing people whose only power was the knowledge of who belonged in their community, he felt more uncertain than he had in years. My wife, he said quietly. She left me 4 days ago. She's 6 months pregnant with a high-risk pregnancy. Her doctor said she needs close monitoring, hospital access, stress reduction. Instead, she's somewhere in this town, alone, probably without proper medical care, because I drove her away. Drove her away how? Jack's tone suggested he already knew the answer wouldn't be good. By being exactly the kind of man she needed to escape from. By choosing power over love. By listening to people who told me she was weak instead of seeing that she was the strongest person I ever met. Margaret refilled his coffee without being asked. That's a pretty confession for a man in an expensive jacket. The jacket doesn't change what I did, or what I need to do now. Which is, find her, make sure she's safe, and if she'll let me, try to be the man she deserved 3 years ago instead of the one I became. Jack and Margaret exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Then Jack pulled out a chair and sat down across from Lorenzo. Let me tell you something about Harbor's Edge, Jack said. This town has about 3,000 people, We know each other's business. We look out for each other. And when someone shows up here trying to escape something bad, we tend to close ranks. I understand. Do you? Because what I'm saying is that if there's a young woman in this town who doesn't want to be found, there are 3,000 people who will make sure you never get close to her. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. I'm not here to hurt her. Maybe not, but hurt comes in a lot of forms, doesn't it? Margaret leaned against the counter. Money can hurt, power can hurt. Good intentions wrapped in the wrong actions can hurt worst of all. I know. Lorenzo's voice cracked slightly. I know because I did all of that already. I hurt her in every way that matters. But she's pregnant with my daughter. She's at risk. And whether she forgives me or not, whether she ever speaks to me again or not, I need to know she's safe. Jack stood abruptly. Wait here. He disappeared into the back. Lorenzo sat in the silence that followed, aware that every person in the diner was listening to every word. The fishermen at their table, the elderly couple in the corner booth, the teenage kid washing dishes in the kitchen. This was Elena's new community. These were the people who had taken her in, protected her, given her the refuge his cruelty had made necessary. Margaret refilled his coffee a third time. Your dinner's almost ready. I'm not really hungry. Eat anyway. You look like you haven't slept in days. She wasn't wrong. Lorenzo couldn't remember the last time he had eaten a full meal or slept more than an hour at a time. Jack returned 10 minutes later with an older man who had the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans, but something about the way he carried himself suggested he wasn't just another local. This is Thomas Wade, Jack said, town doctor. Runs the clinic on Harbor Street. Lorenzo stood immediately. Is she all right? Has she been to see you? Dr. Wade held up a hand. Before we discuss any patients, I need to understand who you are and what your intentions are. Lorenzo Vieri, Elena's husband, and my intentions are to make sure she and our daughter survive the next 3 months. You're the man she left. It wasn't a question, but Lorenzo answered anyway. Yes, the man who broke her heart so thoroughly that she chose to risk dying alone rather than stay in her marriage. Each word was a knife. Yes. Dr. Wade pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. I've been a doctor for 34 years. I've seen a lot of things, but I've never seen someone as determined to survive against impossible odds as the young woman who walked into my clinic 3 days ago. Lorenzo's breath caught. She's here. She's alive. She's alive, barely. Her condition is worse than I've seen in years. Her heart is failing under the strain of the pregnancy. Her blood pressure is dangerously elevated. She should be in a hospital with specialists and equipment I don't have access to in this town. Then I'll take her to... She won't go. Dr. Wade's voice was flat. I told her the same thing, begged her to let me arrange transport to Portland. She refused, said she'd rather die free than go back to being invisible. The words hit Lorenzo like physical blows. Invisible. That's what she had felt. Invisible in her own marriage while he had been too blind to see her fading away. Where is she? Before I answer that, you need to understand something. That young woman has been through hell. Whatever you did to her, it broke something fundamental. She doesn't trust easily anymore. She doesn't believe in promises. And she sure as hell doesn't believe in you. I know. Do you? Because if you walk into her life right now, it could kill her. The stress alone could trigger premature labor or cardiac arrest. So before I tell you anything, I need to know, are you here because you love her or because you feel guilty? Lorenzo stared at the doctor, at the challenge in his eyes, at the protective anger barely held in check. This man had known Elena for 3 days and was already more protective of her than Lorenzo had been in 3 years. Both, Lorenzo said quietly. I'm here because I love her more than I knew how to show, and I'm here because the guilt of what I did is destroying me. And I'm here because she's carrying my daughter, and I will not let them face this alone, even if Elena hates me for the rest of her life. Dr. Wade studied him for a long moment. Then he pulled out a business card and wrote an address on the back. The Seaside Pages. It's a bookstore on Harbor Street, 2 blocks from here. There's an apartment above it. That's where she's staying. Lorenzo took the card with shaking hands. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm only telling you because someone needs to watch over her medically, and I can't be there 24 hours a day. But, Mr. Vieri, if you make things worse, if you cause her more pain, more stress, more heartbreak, There are 3,000 people in this town who will make you disappear in ways the police will never solve. Do we understand each other? Perfectly. Lorenzo left money on the counter for a meal he hadn't eaten and walked out into the cool evening air. 2 blocks. Elena was 2 blocks away from him right now. He found the seaside pages easily. It was a small storefront with a painted sign showing an open book with waves beneath it. The windows displayed bestsellers and local interest books. A light glowed in the window of the apartment above. Lorenzo stood on the sidewalk for several minutes, staring up at that light, trying to find the courage to climb the stairs and knock on the door. What would he say? How could he possibly explain 3 years of failure in a single conversation? How could he make her understand that he had been blind, but now he could see, deaf, but now he could hear, lost, but now he desperately wanted to find his way back? A voice spoke from the darkness beside the building. You planning to stand there all night, or are you actually going to knock? Lorenzo spun. A woman emerged from the shadows, late 50s, silver hair pulled back in a practical braid, wearing an apron dusted with flour. She had the kind of face that suggested she didn't suffer fools and had seen through every lie she'd ever been told. I own the bookstore, she said. Rose Henderson, and you must be the husband. Did Elena tell you about me? Didn't have to. The way she flinches when anyone mentions marriage or power or family tells me everything I need to know about you. Rose crossed her arms. Question is, what are you going to do now that you're here? I don't know, Lorenzo admitted. I came here to make sure she's safe, to try to fix what I broke. But I don't know if that's even possible. Probably not. Rose's bluntness was startling. You can't unfuck something that badly fucked, pardon my language. But what you can do is be honest. No games, no manipulation, no trying to control the situation. Just truth. Even if it makes you look like the bastard you probably are. She won't even want to see me. Probably not, Rose repeated. But she needs to. Whether she admits it or not, she needs closure. She needs to look you in the eye and tell you exactly what you did to her. She needs to be heard. And you need to listen without defending yourself, without making excuses, without trying to fix it. And then? Then you leave if she asks you to. You stay if she lets you. And you accept whatever decision she makes without trying to influence it. Rose moved toward the stairs that led to the apartment. Come on, let's get this over with. Now? Shouldn't I wait until when? Until you've rehearsed the perfect speech? Until you've figured out how to make yourself look better? Rose shook her head. She's upstairs right now, alone, probably terrified about the future. You want to help? Stop calculating and start being human. Lorenzo followed Rose up the narrow stairs. His heart hammered against his ribs. His hands felt cold despite the mild evening temperature. Rose knocked on the apartment door. Elena, honey, it's Rose. I've got someone here who needs to talk to you. Silence. Then Elena's voice, tired and wary. I don't want any visitors. I know, sweetheart, but this one can't wait. Rose, I'm really not. Rose opened the door without waiting for permission. The apartment was small but comfortable. Worn furniture that looked lived in rather than expensive. Shelves overflowing with books. A window overlooking the harbor. And in the center of the room, standing with one hand pressed protectively against her swollen abdomen, was Elena. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, cut in a practical style that framed her face. She wore simple clothes, leggings, and an oversized sweater. No makeup, no jewelry, no expensive trappings. She looked younger somehow, or maybe just more herself than she had in years. She also looked exhausted, fragile, like a strong wind could knock her over. And when she saw Lorenzo standing in the doorway, every bit of color drained from her face. No. The word was barely a whisper. No, you can't be here. You can't. Her knees buckled. Lorenzo moved on instinct, crossing the room in 3 strides and catching her before she hit the floor. He eased her onto the couch, his hands shaking as he helped her sit. Breathe, he said urgently. Elena, breathe. Slow breaths. That's it. She pushed his hands away with surprising strength. Get away from me. Get out. You can't be here. I'll leave if you want me to, but please, just let me make sure you're okay first. Rose appeared with a glass of water. Drink this, honey. Slow sips. Elena took the water with trembling hands. She drank mechanically, her eyes never leaving Lorenzo's face, as if she expected him to disappear if she looked away. How did you find me? Her voice was steady now, but cold. I was so careful. I hired someone, a private investigator. Elena, you hired someone to hunt me down. Of course you did. Because that's what you do, isn't it? You find problems and you solve them. You control situations. Her breath hitched. You couldn't just let me go. You had to chase me even here. I needed to know you were safe. Safe? She laughed, a bitter sound with no humor in it. I'm dying, Lorenzo. My heart is giving out. The pregnancy is killing me. But I'm still safer here, alone, than I ever was with you. The words were designed to hurt, and they succeeded. Lorenzo felt each one like a physical wound. I know, he said quietly. I know what I did. I read your letters. I listened to the recording. I know how badly I failed you. Then why are you here? To apologize? To make yourself feel better about destroying our marriage? Elena's hand moved to her stomach again, protective, defiant. Or did you finally decide you want the heir everyone kept asking about? I'm here because you're carrying our daughter, because you're at risk, because I love you, and I was too much of a coward to say it when it mattered. Love, Elena spat the word like poison. You don't know what love means. Love doesn't humiliate someone in front of their enemies. Love doesn't call someone weak when they're dying to give you a child. Love doesn't choose power over the person who would have given up everything for you. You're right. Lorenzo stayed kneeling on the floor in front of her, making himself vulnerable in a way he had never allowed before. You're absolutely right. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve another chance. I probably don't deserve to breathe the same air as you. But Elena, please, let me help. Let me make sure you and our daughter survive this. Why? So you can take her back to your empire. Raise her to be as cold and calculating as you've become? Turn her into another Vieri who measures worth by power instead of love? No, so she has a chance to know her mother, so you both survive. I don't care about the empire anymore. I don't care about power or legacy or any of it. I walked away from everything to come here. Elena's eyes narrowed. You're lying. You would never walk away from the Vieri organization. It's who you are. It was who I was. It's not who I want to be anymore. Lorenzo pulled out his phone and showed her the emails he had sent over the past 4 days. Delegation of authority to Marcus Webb. Removal of Sophia from all positions. Restructuring of power that took him from the center of the empire to the periphery. Elena read the messages in silence. When she looked up, her expression was unreadable. This doesn't change anything. I know. You can't just show up here and expect me to forget 3 years of pain because you suddenly decided to play the reformed husband. I don't expect that. Then what do you expect? Lorenzo took a shaky breath. Nothing. I expect nothing from you, but I'm asking, begging, for a chance to prove I can be better, not as your husband, not as the head of some criminal empire, just as a man who wants to take care of the woman he loves and the daughter they created. I don't need you to take care of me. Yes, you do. Dr. Wade's voice came from the doorway. Neither Elena nor Lorenzo had heard him climb the stairs. I'm sorry, Elena, but you do. Your condition has deteriorated since you arrived. If you go into labor now, with the resources I have available in this town, I give you a 50-50 chance of survival. Those aren't odds I'm comfortable with. Elena's face crumpled. I can't go back. I can't go back to that life. I'd rather die here than... No one is asking you to go back, Lorenzo interrupted. I'm here. I'm staying here. In this town. For as long as you need. If you want me to rent an apartment on the other side of Harbor's Edge and only see you when the doctor requires it, I'll do that. If you want me to leave entirely, I'll do that too. But please, Elena, let me do something. Let me help in some way. The silence that followed felt endless. Elena stared at him, searching his face for lies, for manipulation, for any sign of the man who had destroyed her. Lorenzo stared back, letting her see everything, the guilt, the love, the desperate hope, the bone-deep fear that he had lost her forever. Finally, she spoke. You can stay in Harbor's Edge. You can check in with Dr. Wade about my condition, but you don't come here unless I ask you to. You don't try to see me. You don't send messages through other people. You give me space. Okay. I mean it, Lorenzo. If you push, if you try to control this situation the way you control everything else, I will disappear again. And next time, you won't find me. I understand. Do you? Because I'm not saying maybe we can work things out. I'm not saying there's hope for us.
I'm saying I will tolerate your presence in this town purely for medical reasons. Nothing more.
Each word was a nail in the coffin of their marriage, but Lorenzo accepted them without argument. Nothing more. I understand. Elena turned to Dr. Wade. How bad is it really? The doctor moved into the room and sat down beside her. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. Your heart is showing signs of failure. If you go into labor in the next few weeks, it could kill you. You need bed rest, stress reduction, and access to emergency medical care. Can you provide that here? I can try, but Elena, I have to be honest. If something goes wrong, if you need emergency surgery or advanced cardiac intervention, the nearest hospital with those capabilities is 2 hours away. In an emergency, that's too far. I'm not going back to the city. I'm not asking you to. But I'm asking you to let me set up a proper care plan. Let me consult with specialists in Portland. Let me make sure we have contingencies in place if things go wrong. Doctor, Wade glanced at Lorenzo. And whether you like it or not, having someone here who can provide financial resources and rapid transport if necessary isn't a bad thing. Elena's jaw tightened. I won't be controlled. No one's trying to control you, Rose interjected gently. But honey, pride won't keep you alive. Your daughter won't care whether you accepted help or refused it. She'll just care whether she gets to meet her mother. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. I'm so tired. I'm tired of being afraid. Tired of feeling like I'm not strong enough. Tired of needing anyone. Lorenzo's hands clenched at his sides. Every instinct screamed at him to cross the room, to hold her, to promise everything would be okay. But he held himself rigid, respecting the distance she had demanded. You're the strongest person I've ever met, he said quietly. Strong enough to walk away from everything you knew. Strong enough to survive alone. Strong enough to fight for our daughter, even when your own body is giving up. If I had 1/10 of your strength, our marriage might not be in ruins. Elena wiped her eyes roughly. Don't try to flatter me back into forgiving you. I'm not. I'm just telling you the truth. I should have seen years ago. She looked at him for a long moment, then turned to Dr. Wade. Set up whatever care plan you think is necessary. I'll follow your medical advice, but I make my own decisions about everything else. Fair enough. And you... Elena's eyes locked on Lorenzo. You stay away from me. You don't try to have conversations. You don't try to explain yourself. If I need you for something medical, Dr. Wade will contact you. Otherwise, you don't exist to me. Lorenzo nodded, not trusting his voice. Rose stood and gestured toward the door. Come on, let's give Elena some space. Lorenzo rose slowly, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. She looked so small on that couch, so fragile, so far away from him despite being only a few feet distant. I'm sorry, he said, for everything, for all of it. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know I'm sorry. Elena didn't respond. She just turned her face toward the window, effectively dismissing him. Lorenzo followed Rose and Dr. Wade down the stairs and out into the night. The cool air hit his face like a slap, bringing him back to reality. There's a motel on the edge of town, Dr. Wade said. The Harbor Rest. Tell Martha I sent you. She'll set you up with a room. Thank you for everything you're doing for Elena. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for her and that baby. Dr. Wade's voice was hard. You hurt her again, and I don't care how much money you have or what kind of power you used to wield. I will make you regret it. I know. Dr. Wade left without another word. Rose lingered, studying Lorenzo with those sharp eyes. You really love her, don't you? More than I knew how to show. Then prove it. Not with grand gestures or expensive gifts or dramatic declarations. Prove it by being patient, by respecting her boundaries, by being the man she needs instead of the man you think you should be. How do I do that when she won't even let me near her? Rose smiled sadly. That's the thing about real love. It's not about what you get. It's about what you're willing to give, even when you get nothing in return. Can you do that? Can you love her enough to let her hate you? Lorenzo looked up at the window where Elena sat, visible in silhouette against the warm light. I have to try, he said, because she's all that matters, she and our daughter. Everything else can burn. Rose patted his arm, a surprisingly gentle gesture. Then maybe there's hope for you yet. Just maybe. She left him standing alone on the darkening street, staring up at the light that held everything he had lost and everything he desperately wanted back. The Harbor Rest Motel was exactly what its name suggested, a place for temporary refuge, nothing more. Lorenzo's room had a bed that sagged in the middle, wallpaper from the 1980s, and a view of the parking lot. It was the furthest thing from the luxury penthouse he had left behind, and somehow that felt appropriate. He didn't sleep that first night. Just sat by the window watching the darkness gradually give way to dawn, replaying every moment of seeing Elena again. The way she had looked at him with such pain and anger, the protective hand on her swollen abdomen, the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. She was dying, and he had put her there. At 6 in the morning, Lorenzo's phone rang. Marcus Webb's name flashed on the screen. "You disappeared off the face of the earth," Marcus said without preamble. "Gerald is losing his mind trying to finalize the restructuring documents. Your mother is threatening legal action, and Senator Morrison is asking questions about your sudden absence from the waterfront negotiations. Handle it." "I am handling it. But Lorenzo, you need to understand, walking away from everything isn't as simple as delegating responsibility. There are contracts, agreements, relationships that exist because of you personally. People are getting nervous."
Then let them be nervous. Lorenzo's voice was flat. "I told you I was stepping back. That means you make the decisions now. You handle Morrison, you manage the contracts, you deal with my mother's theatrics. I'm done." A long pause. "What happened up there? Did you find her?" "Yes." "And?" "And she can barely stand to look at me. She's 8 months pregnant and dying. And the only reason she's tolerating my presence in the same town is because her doctor insisted someone needs to be available for medical emergencies." "Christ, Lorenzo." Marcus's voice softened. "I'm sorry. What can I do?" "Keep the empire running. Keep my mother away from anything important. And if anyone asks where I am, you don't know." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." Lorenzo ended the call and stared at his phone for several minutes before making the second call he had been dreading. Gerald Moss answered on the first ring. "Lorenzo, thank God. I have the documents ready, but I need your signature on. Email them. I'll sign electronically." "There are some matters that require in-person, then they'll have to wait. Gerald, I need you to do something else for me. Set up a medical fund, anonymous. Route it through enough layers that it can't be traced back to me. I want Dr. Thomas Wade in Harbor's Edge, Maine, to have access to unlimited resources for a patient he's treating." "Unlimited? Lorenzo, I don't care what it costs. Medical equipment, specialist consultations, emergency transport, whatever he needs. Set it up today." "Who's the patient?" "That's not relevant to the legal work. Can you do it or not?" Gerald sighed. "I can do it." "But Lorenzo, your mother is asking questions about your assets. If you're moving large amounts of money around without explanation, it's going to raise flags." "My mother no longer has any authority over my assets or my decisions. Make sure the documents reflect that clearly." "They do. I'll have everything ready by end of business today." Lorenzo spent the rest of the morning walking through Harbor's Edge, learning the geography of Elena's new life. The bookstore where she lived above Rose's inventory of novels and local histories. The small clinic where Dr. Wade worked out of a converted house on Harbor Street. The diner where Margaret served coffee and judgment in equal measure. The harbor itself, where fishing boats departed before dawn and returned with their catches in the afternoon. It was such a small world compared to the empire he had commanded. No boardrooms or power brokers, no million-dollar deals or political maneuvering. Just people living simple lives, connected to each other and the rhythm of the ocean. Elena had chosen this over him, and Lorenzo couldn't blame her. Around noon, Dr. Wade found him sitting on a bench overlooking the harbor. "You're already a topic of conversation," the doctor said, sitting down without invitation. "Small town. Stranger shows up asking about a young woman. People talk." "What are they saying?" "That you're either law enforcement, a dangerous ex, or both. Rose told a few people you're Elena's husband, which has spawned a whole new round of speculation about what kind of man drives his pregnant wife to run away." "The worst kind," Lorenzo said quietly. Dr. Wade pulled out a file folder. "I spent this morning on the phone with specialists in Portland. Cardiologists, maternal fetal medicine experts, high-risk pregnancy teams. They all said the same thing. Elena should be in a hospital under 24-hour observation. But she won't go. No, she won't. Which means we need to bring the hospital to her." Dr. Wade opened the folder, revealing a list of equipment and resources. "I need monitoring equipment, medications I don't normally stock,
and a plan for emergency intervention if she goes into labor. The nearest hospital with a cardiac unit is Portland Medical Center, 2 hours away. In an emergency, we'd need a helicopter. Consider it done. Just like that? Just like that. Tell me what you need and I'll make it happen. Dr. Wade studied him carefully. You know she'll hate you for this. She'll see it as you trying to control her through money. She already hates me. At least this way she'll survive long enough to hate me in person. The doctor nodded slowly. Fair enough. I'll send you the list. But Mr. Vieri, the medical equipment is the easy part. The hard part is going to be keeping her calm, reducing her stress, giving her a reason to fight for survival beyond just the baby. How do I do that when she won't even let me near her? You don't. I do. Rose does. The community does. You stay in the background and let the people she trusts take care of her. Dr. Wade stood to leave, then paused. There's one more thing. I need to be honest with you about the odds. Even with the best care, even with everything we can provide, there's a significant chance Elena doesn't survive delivery. Her heart is barely functioning now. When she goes into labor and the stress increases, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Lorenzo's hands clenched into fists. Tell me the real numbers. 30% chance of survival. Maybe 40 if we have all the right equipment and nothing goes wrong. But Mr. Vieri, in obstetrics, something always goes wrong. The number hit Lorenzo like a physical blow. 30%. Less than half. Worse than a coin flip. And the baby? Better odds, maybe 60–70% if we can get Elena through delivery, but it all depends on how her body handles the stress. So we could lose them both. Yes, we could lose them both. Dr. Wade's voice was gentle but unflinching. I'm telling you this because you need to understand what we're facing. This isn't something money can fix. This isn't a negotiation or a business deal. This is life and death, and sometimes death wins no matter what we do. Lorenzo stared out at the ocean, watching waves crash against the rocky shore. Somewhere in this small town, Elena was carrying their daughter, her body slowly failing under the weight of bringing new life into the world. And there was nothing he could do except provide resources and pray it was enough. What does Elena know about the odds? She knows it's dangerous. She doesn't know the specific numbers because she stopped asking after the first consultation. I think, Dr. Wade hesitated. I think she's made peace with the possibility of dying. She talks about the baby like it's the only thing that matters, like her own survival is secondary. That's not acceptable. It's not your choice to make. The words stung because they were true. Nothing about this was Lorenzo's choice anymore. He had forfeited the right to make decisions about Elena's life when he had made her feel worthless in their marriage. Send me the list of equipment, Lorenzo said. Everything you need. And Dr. Wade, thank you for taking care of her when I failed to. The doctor left without responding. Lorenzo spent the afternoon making calls, pulling strings, moving money. By evening, he had arranged for a medical helicopter to be on standby in Portland, contracted with the best maternal-fetal medicine team in the state, and ordered equipment that would turn Dr. Wade's small clinic into something approaching a specialized care facility. It cost a fortune. Lorenzo didn't care. He would burn through every dollar he had if it gave Elena even 1 percentage point better chance of survival. 3 days passed. Lorenzo maintained his distance as promised, staying away from the bookstore, not trying to contact Elena, existing on the periphery of her life. He took work shifts at the harbor office, processing paperwork for fishing permits and boat registrations. The work was menial and boring and required nothing of his intelligence or skill, which made it perfect. He didn't want to think. He just wanted to be useful in whatever small way Harbor's Edge would allow. The locals watched him with suspicion and curiosity. Some knew who he was now. Rose had made sure the story spread, though Lorenzo suspected she had edited the details to make him look as bad as possible. He didn't correct the narrative. Whatever people thought of him, they were probably right. On the 4th day, Margaret from the diner sat down across from him during his lunch break. "You're not what I expected," she said without preamble. "What did you expect?" "Someone more arrogant, more controlling. Rose said you ran a criminal empire. You look more like a man who lost a war." "I did lose a war, the most important one." Margaret poured coffee from the pot she had brought to the table. "Elena came into the diner yesterday. First time she's left the bookstore since you arrived. She looked tired, but I don't know. maybe a little less haunted than when she first got here. Lorenzo's heart stuttered. How is she? Stubborn, scared, trying to pretend she's fine when anyone with eyes can see she's barely holding on. Margaret studied him over her coffee cup. She asked about you. What did she ask? Whether you were really working at the harbor office, whether you were causing trouble, whether people had seen you trying to throw money around or act like you owned the place. Margaret smiled slightly. I told her you've been quiet as a mouse, working your shifts, keeping to yourself, not bothering anyone. She didn't know what to make of that. What should she make of it? That maybe you actually meant what you said about being different. Or maybe you're just smart enough to know that acting like a powerful criminal in a town this small would get you run out before sunset. It's not an act. No? Margaret leaned back in her chair. Then what is it? Penance. Learning to be the kind of man who deserves a woman like Elena instead of the kind who destroyed her. Margaret's expression softened slightly. That's going to take more than a few days of filing fishing permits, honey. I know, I have the rest of my life to work on it, whether she's in it or not. That evening, Rose knocked on Lorenzo's motel room door. She looked agitated, worried in a way that made Lorenzo's blood run cold. What's wrong? Is Elena? Fine, physically, but there's a problem. Rose stepped inside without invitation. Your mother is here. Lorenzo felt the world tilt. What? A woman showed up at the bookstore an hour ago. Expensive clothes, expensive attitude, asking for Elena by name. Said she was Sofia Vieri and she needed to speak with her daughter-in-law about a family matter. Where is she now? I told her Elena wasn't available and asked her to leave. She refused, said she'd wait. She's sitting in the diner right now drinking tea like she owns the place. Lorenzo was already moving, grabbing his jacket and keys. Is Elena safe? Did my mother get near her? No, I made sure of that. But Lorenzo, that woman is up to something. I could see it in her eyes. She didn't come here to reconcile. They reached the diner in minutes. Through the window, Lorenzo could see his mother sitting in a booth, perfectly composed, every inch the elegant matriarch. She looked completely out of place in the small-town diner, but she didn't seem to care. Lorenzo pushed through the door. Every conversation in the room stopped. Margaret stood behind the counter with her arms crossed, looking ready for a fight. Jack had emerged from the kitchen and was watching Sophia with the kind of attention usually reserved for threats. Sophia's eyes met Lorenzo's across the room. There you are, darling. I've been looking for you. How did you find me? Please. I've spent 3 decades in our world. Did you really think you could disappear without me finding you? She smiled, that cold expression that had nothing to do with warmth. We need to talk, privately. We have nothing to discuss. Oh, I think we do. Or would you prefer I have this conversation with your wife instead? Lorenzo moved to the booth and slid in across from her, blocking her view of the rest of the diner. You go anywhere near Elena and I will destroy you. Financially, socially, completely. Do you understand me? Sophia laughed softly. Such protective instincts. Where were those 3 months ago when I was advising you to distance yourself from her? What do you want? To talk sense into you before you throw away everything your father built for a woman who was never strong enough to be a Vieri wife. Elena is stronger than you could ever understand. She's carrying my daughter and dying in the process, and she still chose survival over the toxic empire you helped create. How noble, sick. Sophia's voice dripped sarcasm. And what happens when she delivers this child? What then, Lorenzo? You think you can play house in this fishing village, raise a Vieri heir among people who know nothing of our world, our responsibilities, our legacy? Our legacy is poison. Our world is built on fear and violence, and our responsibilities nearly killed the only person I've ever loved. So yes, Mother, I plan to raise my daughter here, far away from everything you represent. Sophia's eyes narrowed. You're not thinking clearly. The grief, the guilt, it's clouding your judgment. Come back to the city. Come back to your life. We can work out an arrangement for the child, provide financial support, ensure Elena has whatever medical care she needs. But you don't need to abandon everything for... I'm not abandoning everything for Elena. I'm abandoning everything that made me into someone who could hurt her. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I sit, you're throwing away 3 generations of work, billions in assets, relationships that took decades to build, all because of guilt over one woman. That one woman is worth more than everything else combined. Sophia leaned forward, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You're making enemies, Lorenzo. Walking away from obligations, restructuring power dynamics, removing me from positions I've held for years. People are asking questions, making moves. Do you think Marcus Webb is going to be satisfied being your temporary proxy? Do you think the families we've partnered with won't see this as weakness? I don't care. You should care. Because if you don't protect what's yours, someone else will take it. And when they do, they won't be as forgiving as you've been. They'll come after everything you love, including that child. The threat was clear, carefully worded, plausibly deniable, but absolutely real. Lorenzo's hands clenched into fists under the table. If anyone, and I mean anyone, threatens my daughter, they will learn exactly what kind of monster I can become when someone I love is in danger. I walked away from the Empire, Mother. I didn't forget how to protect what matters. Bold words, but you can't protect them from here. You can't protect them while playing at being a normal man in a normal town. The world we live in doesn't allow for that kind of fantasy. Then I'll change the world I live in. Sophia stood, smoothing her expensive skirt. You always were sentimental. Your father worried about that. I told him you'd outgrow it, that power would burn away the weakness. I was wrong. Yes, you were. I'm staying at a bed and breakfast on the edge of town. When you come to your senses, you know where to find me. She started toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Lorenzo, that fund you set up for the doctor, the anonymous medical resources? I know about it, which means others will too. You can't hide in this town forever. Eventually, your past will find you. She left in a swirl of expensive perfume and implied threats. Margaret appeared at Lorenzo's table immediately. What was that about? My mother trying to convince me that love is weakness and power is the only thing that matters. And what did you tell her? That she's wrong. Lorenzo stood, his legs unsteady. I need to see Dr. Wade, now. He found the doctor at the clinic, reviewing charts. Lorenzo didn't bother with pleasantries. My mother is in town. She knows about Elena, about the baby, about everything. She's making veiled threats about my business associates, potentially targeting my family. Dr. Wade's expression turned grim. You think she's serious? I think she's desperate. I restructured her out of power. She wants it back. And she'll use any leverage she can find. What do you need from me? Keep Elena safe. Don't let her go anywhere alone. Don't let any strangers near her. And if anyone comes asking about her or the baby, you contact me immediately. You think someone would actually try to hurt a pregnant woman? Lorenzo's face was stone. I think the people I used to work with don't care about collateral damage. If they want to send me a message, Elena would be the perfect target. Then maybe you should leave. Take the threat with you. No, because if I leave, I can't protect them. At least here, I'm close enough to respond if something happens. Dr. Wade nodded slowly. I'll talk to Jack and some of the other men in town. Set up a subtle watch. Make sure Elena always has someone nearby. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because that young woman deserves to feel safe. Lorenzo left the clinic and walked to the harbor, needing the sound of waves and the salt air to clear his head. His mother's visit had shaken something loose, reminded him that the empire he had built didn't just disappear because he walked away. It existed. It had momentum, and it had teeth. He pulled out his phone and called Marcus. I need to know everything, Lorenzo said when Marcus answered. Everyone who's making moves, everyone who's asking questions, everyone who might see my absence as an opportunity. That's a long list. Then you better start talking. Marcus spent the next 20 minutes detailing the shifting power dynamics. Senator Morrison was making overtures to the Chen family. The waterfront development was stalling without Lorenzo's direct involvement. 3 different organizations were testing the boundaries of Vieri territory, seeing what they could take while the boss was gone. It's manageable, Marcus concluded, but it won't stay that way indefinitely. You need to either come back or make it clear you're done permanently. This halfway position is creating instability. I can't come back. Not now. Maybe not ever. Then you need to officially step down, transfer power completely. Make it clear the Vieri Empire has new leadership. And if I do that, what happens to the people who depend on that leadership? They adapt or they die. That's how it's always worked. Lorenzo ended the call and stood at the edge of the harbor, watching the sun set over the Atlantic. Somewhere behind him, Elena was in her apartment above the bookstore, carrying their daughter, trying to survive each day. And somewhere out there in the world he had left behind, dangerous people were circling, sensing weakness, preparing to strike. He had thought walking away would be enough. He had thought he could just choose a different life and everything else would fade into the background. But power didn't work that way. Violence didn't work that way. The empire he had built had roots and tentacles that reached further than he had realized, and cutting them off might cause more damage than maintaining them. For the first time since leaving the city, Lorenzo felt the weight of an impossible choice settling onto his shoulders. Protect Elena by staying close, but risk bringing his dangerous past down on her head. Or leave, hoping that distance would keep the threats away, but abandon her to face the danger alone. Neither option was acceptable. Neither option kept her safe. Lorenzo walked back toward the motel as darkness fell over Harbor's Edge, his mind racing through scenarios, contingencies, possibilities. He needed a plan that protected Elena without sacrificing the life she was trying to build. He needed to find a way to end the threats permanently, to cut the ties that bound him to his past in a way that left no room for retaliation. And he needed to do it before his mother or anyone else decided that Elena was a useful pressure point. The motel room was dark and cold. Lorenzo sat on the edge of the sagging bed and stared at his phone, at the contacts list filled with numbers for dangerous men, powerful men, men who could solve problems with a phone call and money. He could make those problems go away. He knew how. But using those methods, calling in those favors, would make him exactly what Elena was running from. The choice between who he had been and who he wanted to become felt impossibly narrow, and the stakes had never been higher. In the apartment above the bookstore, Elena pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her heart struggle against rhythms that grew more irregular each day. She didn't know about Sophia's visit, didn't know about the threats circling like sharks, didn't know that Lorenzo was sitting alone in a motel room, trying to find a way to save her from dangers she couldn't see. All she knew was that her daughter kicked and turned inside her, a constant reminder that survival wasn't optional, that she had to hold on just a little longer, just until their baby could breathe on her own, just until Elena could look into her daughter's eyes and know that all the pain, all the fear, all the risk had been worth it. The storm that would change everything was gathering on the horizon, building strength over dark water, and neither Elena nor Lorenzo saw it coming. The call came at 2 a.m, 6 days after Sophia's visit. Lorenzo was awake. He was always awake these days, when his phone shattered the silence of the motel room. Rose's name flashed on the screen. "It's happening," she said, her voice tight with controlled panic. "Elena's in labor. Dr. Wade is with her now, but it's bad, Lorenzo. Her heart—" Lorenzo was already moving, pulling on clothes, grabbing keys. "I'm 2 minutes away." "The roads are flooding. There's a storm coming in from the Atlantic. Dr. Wade says if she needs emergency transport to Portland, I'll handle it. Just keep her alive until I get there." He ran through streets already slick with rain, the wind picking up strength as the storm rolled in from the ocean. The bookstore's lights blazed through the darkness like a beacon. Lorenzo took the stairs 3 at a time and burst through the apartment door. The scene inside stopped him cold. Elena was on the couch, her face contorted in pain, one hand gripping Rose's arm hard enough to leave marks. Dr. Wade knelt beside her with a blood pressure cuff and stethoscope, his expression grim. Medical equipment Lorenzo had paid for surrounded them, monitors beeping, oxygen ready, emergency supplies laid out with military precision. But it wasn't enough. Lorenzo could see it in the doctor's face, in the way Elena's breathing came too fast and shallow, in the numbers flashing red on the cardiac monitor. "Contractions are 4 minutes apart," Dr. Wade said without looking up. "Blood pressure is through the roof, heart rate is erratic. We need to get her to Portland now or we're going to lose them both." "The roads," Rose started, "are flooding, I know." Lorenzo pulled out his phone and dialed a number he had hoped never to use. "This is Lorenzo Vieri. I need emergency medical transport from Harbor's Edge, Maine, to Portland Medical Center. Immediately." The voice on the other end was professional, efficient. "Sir, there's a severe weather system moving through that area. Flight conditions are—" "I don't care about flight conditions. I have a woman in active labor with cardiac failure. You have a helicopter on standby in Portland. Get it in the air now." "Mr. Vieri, the liability is mine. I'll sign whatever papers you need. But if that helicopter isn't here in 20 minutes, I will personally ensure your company never flies another medical transport in this state. Am I clear? A pause. Then, the helicopter will be there in 18 minutes. There's a clear area near the harbor that can serve as a landing zone. Lorenzo ended the call and turned to Dr. Wade. Helicopter inbound, 18 minutes. Another contraction hit Elena. She cried out, a sound of pure agony that tore through Lorenzo's chest. Her hand shot out blindly, and without thinking, Lorenzo crossed the room and caught it. I've got you, he said. Just breathe. The helicopter is coming. We're getting you to the hospital. Elena's eyes found his, wide with pain and fear. I can't. Lorenzo, I can't do this. It hurts. Everything hurts. I know it hurts. But you're the strongest person I've ever met. You can do this. You can survive this. The baby is going to be fine. You're both going to be fine. Dr. Wade cut in, his voice urgent. We need to move her now. The landing zone is 3 blocks away. Can she walk? No, Lorenzo said. I'll carry her. He slipped one arm under Elena's knees, the other behind her back, and lifted her as gently as possible. She was lighter than he expected, too light, her body consumed by the pregnancy and the failing heart. Rose, grab the emergency bag, Dr. Wade ordered. We need to move. They emerged into a storm that had transformed Harbor's Edge into something from a nightmare. Rain fell in sheets, driven horizontal by winds that howled off the ocean. The streets were already ankle-deep in water. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the town in stark white flashes. Lorenzo carried Elena through the deluge, Dr. Wade and Rose flanking them with medical supplies. Each step was treacherous on the flooded pavement. Elena's contractions continued, racking her body every few minutes, and each time Lorenzo felt her pain like it was his own. I'm sorry, she gasped between contractions. I'm so sorry you have to. Don't apologize. Don't you dare apologize. This is my fault. All of it. I should have been there. I should have known. I should have. Another contraction cut him off. Elena's scream was lost in the roar of wind and thunder. They reached the harbor clearing as the helicopter appeared through the storm, its spotlight cutting through the rain. The pilot set down with precision that spoke of years handling difficult conditions. The side door slid open and 2 paramedics jumped out with a stretcher. Cardiac patient in active labor, Dr. Wade shouted over the helicopter noise. 8 months gestation, history of preeclampsia and heart failure. We need immediate transport to Portland Medical's cardiac obstetrics unit. The paramedics moved with practiced efficiency, transferring Elena from Lorenzo's arms to the stretcher, securing her, connecting monitoring equipment. One of them looked at Lorenzo. Family? I'm her husband. You can ride with us, but it's going to be rough. This storm? I don't care. I'm coming. They loaded Elena into the helicopter. Lorenzo climbed in beside her, taking her hand again as the paramedics worked. Dr. Wade appeared at the door. I'm coming too. She needs a doctor who knows her history. The pilot didn't argue. Within 2 minutes, they were airborne, the helicopter fighting against winds that tried to throw them sideways. Lightning flashed dangerously close. Rain hammered the windscreen like bullets. Elena's hand crushed Lorenzo's as another contraction hit. The cardiac monitor screamed warnings. One of the paramedics was shouting into a radio, calling ahead to Portland Medical, rattling off medical terminology that Lorenzo only half understood. Stay with me, Lorenzo said, his mouth close to Elena's ear. Don't you dare leave me. Not now. Not like this. I'm scared, she whispered. Lorenzo, I'm so scared. I know, but I'm here. I'm not leaving. I'm never leaving again. Her eyes met his, and in them he saw 3 years of pain, of loneliness, of feeling invisible in her own marriage. But he also saw something else, a flicker of the woman who had loved him once, before he had destroyed everything good between them. Our daughter, Elena said. If something happens, you have to promise me you'll protect her, raise her differently. Don't let her grow up thinking power is more important than love. You're both going to survive this. You hear me? You're both... Promise me, Lorenzo. The helicopter lurched violently. The pilot cursed. Lightning struck so close that the flash blinded them temporarily. I promise, Lorenzo said, his voice breaking. But you're going to raise her yourself. You're going to teach her to be strong like you, to stand up for herself, to never let anyone make her feel invisible. Elena managed the ghost of a smile. She'll need a father too, one who knows how to choose love over power. Then we'll both teach her, together. The cardiac monitor's alarm changed pitch, becoming more urgent. Dr. Wade was at Elena's other side now, checking vitals, his face grave. Her heart is failing, he said to the paramedics. We need to land now. 5 minutes to Portland Medical, the pilot called back. I can't go any faster in this weather. She doesn't have 5 minutes. The paramedic pulled out equipment Lorenzo didn't recognize. We're going to have to stabilize her heart or she'll arrest before we land. What followed was the longest 5 minutes of Lorenzo's life. He watched medical professionals fight to keep Elena alive while the helicopter battled through the storm. Watched her fade in and out of consciousness. Watched the monitors scream warnings that her body was giving up. And he held her hand through all of it, willing his own strength into her failing heart. Don't leave me, he whispered over and over. Please don't leave me. I love you. I never stopped loving you. I was just too broken to show it. Please, Elena, please hold on. The helicopter touched down on the Portland Medical Center rooftop with a jarring impact. The doors flew open and suddenly there were people everywhere. Doctors, nurses, a full trauma team ready and waiting. They pulled Elena out of the helicopter and onto a gurney. Lorenzo tried to follow, but someone held him back. Sir, you need to stay here. They're taking her directly to surgery. I need to be with her. You can't, not where she's going. Cardiac operating room. Emergency cesarean. Family waiting area is on the 3rd floor. Lorenzo watched them wheel Elena away, watched her disappear through doors he couldn't follow her through. The last thing he saw was her hand reaching out toward him before the surgical team surrounded her completely. Dr. Wade appeared at his side, soaked and exhausted. Come on, there's nothing we can do now except wait. The waiting area was sterile and impersonal, fluorescent lights that were too bright, chairs that were uncomfortable by design, a television playing news coverage of the storm that was battering the coast. Lorenzo sat with his head in his hands, Dr. Wade beside him in silence. Minutes crawled past like hours. An hour felt like days. A nurse appeared periodically with updates that told them nothing. Still in surgery, doctors are doing everything they can. Lorenzo's phone buzzed. Marcus calling. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Gerald. Ignored. A third time. His mother. He almost threw the phone across the room, but Dr. Wade stopped him. You should answer that. Get it over with. Lorenzo accepted the call. What? I heard about Elena, Sophia said, her voice carefully neutral. She's in surgery. They're trying to save her life and our daughter's life because she spent months dying while I was too busy listening to you to notice. Lorenzo, I understand you're emotional, but emotional? My wife is on an operating table right now, her heart failing, because I was a coward who let you poison the only real thing in my life. So no, Mother, I don't want your concern. I don't want your advice. I don't want anything from you except for you to disappear from my life permanently. You'll regret. Lorenzo ended the call and turned off the phone. 2 hours passed, then 3. Rose arrived sometime around hour 4, having driven through the storm from Harbor's Edge. She brought coffee and news that the town was flooding, but everyone was safe. The whole town is praying for her, Rose said quietly. Margaret organized something at the church. Even the people who never go. They're all there asking for Elena and the baby to pull through. Lorenzo couldn't respond. His throat was too tight. Hour 5 came and went. At hour 6, a surgeon finally emerged, still in scrubs, a surgical mask pulled down around her neck. She looked exhausted. Mr. Vieri? Lorenzo was on his feet instantly. How is she? How's the baby? Your daughter is alive, 5 pounds, 3 ounces, small but healthy. She's in the NICU as a precaution, but her vitals are strong. Relief crashed through Lorenzo so powerfully his knees almost buckled. And Elena? The surgeon's expression shifted, became more guarded. Your wife survived the surgery. Barely. We had to perform a cesarean section while simultaneously doing emergency cardiac intervention. Her heart stopped twice during the procedure. We got it started again both times, but Mr. Vieri, I need you to understand, the next 72 hours are critical. Her heart is severely damaged. We have her on medications and mechanical support, but whether she survives depends on how her body responds. Can I see her? She's in cardiac ICU. She won't be conscious for several hours, but yes, you can see her. The surgeon led Lorenzo through corridors that blurred together. Dr. Wade and Rose followed. They passed the NICU first, and through the window Lorenzo saw her, his daughter, impossibly tiny, wrapped in blankets, connected to monitors but breathing on her own. His daughter. The reality of it hit him like a freight train. That tiny human being existed because Elena had been willing to risk everything. Had been willing to die to bring her into the world. The cardiac ICU was quieter, dimmer. The surgeon led him to a room where Elena lay surrounded by machines that breathed for her, monitored her, kept her alive through technology and medication. She looked so small in the hospital bed, so fragile. Tubes and wires connected her to equipment that beeped and hummed. Her skin was pale, her breathing assisted by a ventilator. But she was alive. "You can sit with her," the surgeon said. "Talk to her if you want. Studies show patients can sometimes hear even when unconscious." Lorenzo pulled a chair beside the bed and took Elena's hand carefully, mindful of the IV line. Her fingers were cold. "I'm here," he said softly. "Our daughter is here. She's beautiful, Elena. She has your nose, your chin, and she's a fighter just like her mother." "She's going to be okay. You both are." The monitors beeped steadily. Elena didn't respond. "I need you to wake up," Lorenzo continued, his voice breaking. "I need you to meet her, to hold her, to see what you created, what you fought for. You can't leave now. Not when she's finally here. Not when you did the impossible and survived bringing her into the world." Still nothing. Lorenzo sat there for hours, holding Elena's hand, talking to her about their daughter, about Harbor's Edge, about anything and everything except the possibility that she might not wake up. Rose brought him coffee he didn't drink. Dr. Wade checked with the nurses periodically. The surgeon returned twice to examine Elena and adjust medications. "Her heart is stabilizing," she said during the second visit. "Slowly, very slowly, but it's a good sign." Dawn broke over Portland. The storm had passed, leaving clear skies and calm waters. Lorenzo watched the sunrise through the ICU window and thought about all the sunrises he had missed while building an empire. All the mornings he could have spent with Elena, talking over coffee, making plans, being present instead of absent. He had wasted so much time. At 9:47 a.m., Elena's fingers twitched in Lorenzo's hand. He sat up instantly. "Elena, can you hear me?" Her eyes moved beneath closed lids. The ventilator hissed rhythmically. "I'm here. I'm right here. You're safe. Our daughter is safe. You did it, Elena. You survived." Slowly, painfully, Elena's eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, confused. Then they found Lorenzo's face, and something like recognition flickered there. She couldn't speak around the breathing tube, but her hand squeezed his weakly. Lorenzo hit the call button. "She's awake. Elena's awake." Nurses flooded into the room. The surgeon appeared minutes later. They checked vitals, asked questions Elena couldn't answer, made notes on charts. Finally, the surgeon turned to Lorenzo. "This is a very good sign. Her heart is responding to treatment better than we hoped. If she continues to improve, we can remove the ventilator in the next 24 hours. And then? And then we see how strong her heart really is. But Mr. Vieri, your wife is a fighter. She's beaten odds that would have killed most people." Over the next 2 days, Elena slowly returned from the edge of death. The ventilator came out. Her voice returned, hoarse and weak, but functional. Her heart stabilized enough that they could reduce the mechanical support. And finally, 36 hours after surgery, they wheeled her daughter into the room. Lorenzo watched as nurses placed the tiny bundle in Elena's arms for the first time. Watched Elena's face transform as she looked down at the baby she had fought so hard to bring into the world. "She's perfect," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She's absolutely perfect." "Just like her mother," Lorenzo said softly. Elena looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw something complicated, pain and love and uncertainty all tangled together. "You stayed. I told you I would. Even when I told you to leave, even when I said I hated you. Especially then." Elena looked back down at their daughter. "I don't know how to do this, Lorenzo. I don't know how to trust you again. How to believe this version of you is real and not just another performance. I know. I don't expect you to trust me. I just expect to prove every single day for the rest of my life that I can be the man you and our daughter deserve. What about your empire, your mother, the life you built?
Doesn't matter. None of it matters compared to this.
You say that now, but what happens when we go back to the real world? When the responsibilities start piling up again? When your mother starts manipulating you again? Lorenzo pulled a chair close to the bed. I'm not going back. I've spent the last week making calls, signing papers, transferring everything. Marcus has full operational control. The Vieri Empire exists, but I'm not part of it anymore. My mother has been completely removed from any position of power. Gerald made sure the legal documents are airtight, and I bought a house in Harbor's Edge. Elena's eyes widened. You what? Bought a house, small place near the harbor, 3 bedrooms. Needs work. I thought maybe, if you'll let me, I could fix it up, make it into a home for our daughter. And if someday you decide you can forgive me enough to let me be part of your life again, there would be room for you too. Lorenzo, I'm not asking you to come back to me. I'm not asking you to forget 3 years of pain. I'm just asking for the chance to be a father, to be present, to be the man I should have been from the beginning. Elena was quiet for a long time, looking down at their sleeping daughter. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I can't promise I'll ever forgive you completely. I can't promise we'll ever be what we were. The trust is broken, Lorenzo, really, truly broken. I know, but... She took a shaky breath. Our daughter deserves a father, and maybe you deserve the chance to prove you can be one. So here's what's going to happen. You can be part of her life. You can visit, spend time with her, help raise her. But me? I need time. I need space. I need to heal from everything that happened. How much time? No, months, maybe years, maybe forever. But if you really mean what you say about being different, you'll give me that time without pressuring me, without trying to manipulate the situation, without using our daughter as leverage. Lorenzo nodded, even though the thought of years without Elena felt like death. Whatever you need, however long it takes. And you have to promise me something else. You have to promise that if you ever feel yourself slipping back into that world, into that mindset, you'll walk away from us completely. Because I will not let our daughter grow up watching her father choose power over love. I'd rather raise her alone than let her think that's normal. I promise. On her life, I promise. Elena looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for lies or manipulation. Finally, she nodded. Okay, we'll try. But Lorenzo, one mistake, one lie, one moment where you prioritize anything over her well-being, and you're gone. Do you understand? Completely. Their daughter stirred in Elena's arms, making small sounds. Elena adjusted her hold, natural and perfect, despite this being the first time. We need to name her, Elena said. I thought maybe you'd want to choose. We choose together. That's how parenting works. Lorenzo sat down carefully on the edge of the hospital bed. What about Hope? Elena looked surprised. Hope? Because that's what she is. Hope for a different future. Hope that broken things can be rebuilt. Hope that I can be better than I was. Elena's eyes filled with tears again. Hope Grace, after my grandmother. Hope Grace Vieri. It's perfect. They sat together in the hospital room, not quite a family, not quite reconciled, but not quite broken beyond repair either. It was a beginning, fragile and uncertain, built on the ruins of everything they had destroyed. 3 weeks later, Elena was discharged from the hospital. Her heart was damaged but functioning. She would need medication, monitoring, lifestyle changes. But she would live. Lorenzo had spent those weeks transforming the house he had bought in Harbor's Edge. New paint, refinished floors, a nursery with soft colors, and a rocking chair by the window overlooking the ocean. Elena moved in with Hope, not because she had forgiven Lorenzo, but because it made practical sense. She needed help with the baby while recovering. She needed to be close to Dr. Wade for medical monitoring. And despite everything, Lorenzo had proven he could be trusted with their daughter. He lived in the house too, but in a separate bedroom. They existed in a careful balance, co-parents, not partners. He took night shifts with Hope so Elena could rest. He cooked meals that met her cardiac diet restrictions. He drove her to medical appointments and held Hope during checkups. And he asked for nothing in return. Months passed. Hope grew from a tiny newborn into a baby who smiled and laughed and reached for her father's face. Elena regained her strength slowly, her heart healing in incremental improvements that Dr. Wade documented with cautious optimism. Lorenzo found work with the harbor office permanently, processing permits and helping local fishermen navigate regulations. It was simple work, honest work, work that let him be home for dinner and present for the moments that mattered. Sophia tried to contact him 3 times. Each time, Lorenzo refused the calls. Finally, she stopped trying. The empire continued without him. Marcus sent quarterly reports. Lorenzo barely read. The waterfront development moved forward. Political connections were maintained. The Vieri name still carried weight in certain circles. But Lorenzo didn't care, because every evening he came home to a house where hope waited with bright eyes and reaching arms, where Elena smiled at him sometimes, cautiously, when he made their daughter laugh, where life was measured in small moments instead of power plays. One evening, 9 months after Hope's birth, Lorenzo was washing dishes when Elena appeared beside him with a dish towel. "I can dry," she offered. It was such a small thing, such a domestic moment, but it felt monumental. They had spent months in the same house barely talking beyond necessities. Elena helping with dishes felt like a bridge being built. They worked in silence for several minutes. Then Elena spoke. "You've kept your promises. All of them." Lorenzo paused mid-wash. "You sound surprised." "I am. I thought—" She trailed off. "I thought this would be another performance, another manipulation, that eventually you'd get bored or frustrated or angry, and the real you would come back. This is the real me, or at least the real me I'm trying to become." Elena dried a plate carefully. "I've been talking to Dr. Wade, to Rose, to people in town. They all say the same thing. You're different, really different, not just acting. I had to become different. The man I was destroyed everything good in his life. Hope asks for you when you're not here. Did you know that? She cries when she hears the door, and you don't come in. She's starting to say da-da, and she looks around for you when she does." Lorenzo felt his throat tighten. "She's the best thing I've ever done. Her in convincing you to marry me in the first place before I ruined it." Elena set down the dish towel and turned to face him. "I'm not ready to be your wife again. I don't know if I ever will be. Too much damage has been done." "I know. But I think maybe we could try being friends. Real friends. Partners in raising hope. People who care about each other even if we're not in love anymore." "Even if you're not in love anymore," Lorenzo corrected gently. "I never stopped. I just forgot how to show it." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Don't say things like that. Don't make this harder than it already is." "I'm sorry, you're right. Friends, partners. That's more than I deserve anyway." She studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she leaned forward and pressed a kiss to his cheek. "Thank you for proving me wrong about you." She left the kitchen before Lorenzo could respond. He stood at the sink, one hand pressed to the spot where her lips had touched his skin, and felt something that had been frozen inside him for years begin to thaw. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't a promise of future romance. But it was hope. 2 years after Hope's birth, Lorenzo sat on the beach behind their house, watching his daughter chase seagulls through the sand. Elena sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "She's going to be fast," Elena observed. "We'll have trouble keeping up with her." "She gets that from you, the strength, the determination. She gets the stubbornness from you." They laughed together, easy and natural. Somewhere along the way, the careful distance had become comfortable companionship. The wound hadn't fully healed, but it had scarred over into something they could both live with. Hope ran back to them, sandy and laughing, and collapsed between her parents. "More beach," she demanded. "Play more." "In a minute, sweetness," Elena said, brushing sand from Hope's dark hair. "Let Mama rest first." "Dada play?" Lorenzo scooped his daughter up and spun her in a circle, delighting in her squeals of joy. When he set her down, she ran back toward the water, fearless and free. "She's going to break hearts someday," Elena said softly. "Let's hope she's smart enough to choose someone who deserves her. Someone who chooses her over power and empire. Someone who never makes her feel invisible." Elena was quiet for a moment. Then, "You did that, made me invisible, for 3 years." "I know. I'm sorry. I'll never stop being sorry." "I know you are. And I think—" She took a breath. "I think I'm starting to forgive you. Not completely, maybe never completely, but enough that I don't hurt every time I look at you anymore." Lorenzo turned to face her.
That's more than I ever hoped for. Don't let it go to your head. We're not together. I'm still not ready for that. I know. But maybe someday, if you keep being this person, if you keep choosing us over everything else, maybe someday I could trust you enough to try again. Hope ran back with a shell, demanding attention.
Lorenzo admired her treasure while Elena watched them both with an expression that was complicated and painful and healing all at once. Someday wasn't a promise, but it was hope. And for a man who had lost everything because he forgot what mattered, hope was more than enough. 5 years after Hope's birth, Lorenzo Vieri stood in the backyard of their Harbor's Edge home watching his daughter's birthday party. The yard was full of children from her kindergarten class, parents from the town, friends who had become family. Elena moved through the crowd, laughing at something Rose said, her heart healthy enough now that Dr. Wade only monitored her quarterly instead of monthly. She wore a simple dress and no jewelry except the ring on her left hand, not the 5-carat diamond from their first engagement, but a simple band Lorenzo had given her 6 months ago when he asked if they could try again. She had said yes, not because she had forgotten the pain, but because over 5 years he had proven every single day that he had changed. That power meant nothing compared to showing up for your daughter's school plays. That empire was worthless next to reading bedtime stories and making breakfast and being present for all the small moments that built a life. The Vieri criminal organization still existed somewhere in the city they had left behind. Lorenzo received reports periodically, always filtered through Marcus, always distant enough that it felt like someone else's life. He had no authority, no control, no connection to that world anymore. And he didn't miss it at all. What he had now was worth infinitely more. A daughter who climbed into his lap every morning and asked him to read her favorite stories. A wife who had learned to trust him again, slowly, painfully, but genuinely. A community that had accepted him not because of his power, but because he showed up, contributed, cared about his neighbors. Hope ran across the yard and threw herself into his arms. "Daddy, Daddy, did you see? I got a bike." "I saw, baby. Are you going to teach me to ride?" She giggled. "You already know how to ride bikes. But I might have forgotten. Maybe you should teach me again, just to be sure." Elena appeared beside them, slipping her hand into Lorenzo's free one. "You're ridiculous. But you love me anyway." She squeezed his hand. "Yeah, I do. Against all logic and self-preservation instinct, I actually do." Hope squirmed down and ran back to her friends. Elena and Lorenzo stood together, watching their daughter laugh and play in the golden afternoon light. "Any regrets?" Elena asked quietly. "About leaving the Empire?" "Never. Even though you could have had everything? Money, power, influence?" Lorenzo pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I have everything, right here. Everything that actually matters." "That's a good answer." "It's the truth." They stood together as the sun set over Harbor's Edge, their daughter's laughter filling the air, surrounded by a life they had built from the ruins of everything they had almost destroyed. It wasn't the empire Lorenzo had once commanded. It wasn't the fairy tale Elena had once imagined. But it was real. It was honest. It was built on love and second chances and the understanding that the most powerful thing in the world wasn't control. It was choosing the people you loved and never abandoning them again. And for Lorenzo Vieri, the man who had lost everything before learning what mattered, that was more than enough. It was everything.